back online. We apologize so much for the technical problems that we've just had. Not the city of Berlin was guilty. I want to stress that right now, because otherwise we get some problems here with the mayor. So there were some problems which we don't know the reasons for. And when you're still online, still watching this stream, we are very proud of you and very thankful, because then you're a real hardcore supporter. And we need those supporters for our small, young format Reporter Slam that you are still watching. Thank you so much. I hope in the next few minutes we will get all the viewers back. You have a lot of patience. You can be proud for that. And maybe you write in the comments on YouTube how you used the recent 10 minutes. Maybe you changed the trousers. Maybe you got a beer or some other legal substance. We are interested. We want to know, what have you done during the last 10 minutes? And we will make a story out of it. But now we are back in the stream. If we get offline again, I apologize in advance. Then we try again to refix it, but of course we hope now that the internet is stable now. So we go back to our competition, the Reporter Slam. Let me sum it up. The competition of 3 reporters all over the world who tell one of their craziest experiences whilst researching a story. And we were just starting with the first slammer when the internet went away. So we get back to her. And Emily, I hope you can hear me. Please give your whole presentation again. And for the viewers who have just started this stream, I want to tell what you will see now. Our first contestant comes from the United States, but is living in Berlin already for a while, because she has a scholarship from the Institute of Current World Affairs. And her research focuses on the rise of right-wing populism, primarily in Germany, but also in neighboring countries. And to one of these neighboring countries, we are taken today by her presentation. It's a small but beautiful country with a capital that has been elected the world's most livable city already several times. It's Vienna, and she's sitting right there still, hopefully. So we switch over to Vienna. The floor is yours again, and sorry for all the chaos. Here is Emily Schultheis.
Hi, everyone, and hello again. As Jochen said, I'm Emily Schultheis. I'm sitting in lovely Vienna right now, as you can see from this nice Airbnb poster behind me here, drinking some lovely Austrian wine, and really excited to do this again for you, because I didn't quite realize that the internet cut out, so I actually continued giving most of my presentation, and we're just gonna kind of see how this goes. So for those of you who did not hear the beginning last time, I was a little bit reluctant to do this because I'm not exactly, first of all, I don't really think of myself exactly as sort of a stand-up type, but second of all, I cover one of the more depressing topics in the world, the rise of the far right. And so, you know, between climate change, the pandemic, the rise of populist politicians and the things they do once they're in office, it's, yeah, I mean, not exactly the most uplifting of topics. That said, I thought about it a little bit more and realized that there is at least one good story that I can tell for you. So it's about a wild night in Ibiza that definitely did not stay in Ibiza, and a guy who, just like that terrible boyfriend one of your friends might have had, constantly messes up, and yet some people just can't seem to quit him. So it's a bit of a look into the psychology of a diehard voter for a far-right party. You know, why is it that no matter how many scandals come up, no matter how many things they do, some people will just stick by them? And similarly, why is it that no matter how many scandals some politicians cause, they keep managing to find a way to come back? As an American, given the current occupant of the White House, this is, as you can imagine, a topic that is pretty near and dear to my heart. But tonight is not about he who shall not be named, thankfully. And instead, it is about our main character of the evening, Heinz Christian Strache. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, just like Strache. So this is Heinz Christian Strache, or HC for short. He's 51 years old, born in Vienna, and originally studied to be a dental technician, which is ultimately a bit different than the path that he ended up taking. Luckily for him, and perhaps unluckily for Austria, he abandoned his dental aspirations and instead got into politics. So for the last 3 decades, he has been, or had been, involved in the Austrian Freedom Party, or the FPÖ, and he was the party leader for about 15 years. So I will continue signaling, just like HC, how to move on to my next slide. So the FPÖ is one of the oldest and most successful far-right parties in Europe. It's nationalist, it's Eurosceptic, it's strongly anti-immigration, and under Strache, it has also become increasingly Islamophobic. Like other far-right parties, it has definitely benefited from the increased number of refugees coming into Europe in 2015 and 2016. So here, for example, in German, of course, but a couple of the few slogans that the party has used since Strache took over. Vienna shouldn't become Istanbul. Strache says what Vienna is thinking. Islam needs to be stopped. Vote FPÖ against the EU's asylum chaos. You kind of get the picture. So, again, thumbs up for the slide and not the topic. In parliamentary elections in 2017, the FPÖ did pretty well, got about 26% of the vote, and became the junior partner in Austria's government. So here you can see Strache off to one side. He became vice chancellor. He's standing with Sebastian Kurz, who became chancellor. He's from the center-right People's Party, shaking the hand of Austrian President van der Bellen during the swearing-in ceremony. And, despite predictions that this was going to be a complete disaster, that the parties would have a huge amount of infighting, that the FPÖ would certainly mess it up in some way, for a while things seemed to be actually, pretty stable. And then came one Friday night in May of last year. So two of Germany's biggest news outlets, Der Spiegel and Süddeutsche Zeitung, dropped a major bombshell of a story. Back in 2017, before the elections, Strache, who you can see here, and one of his fellow FPÖ party leaders were on vacation in Ibiza and went and had a drunken evening at a villa with a woman that they thought was the niece of a ultra-wealthy Russian oligarch. And basically sat around and said, if you help us get elected, if you help us win this election, we will offer you government contracts, we will sell Austrian water to you, basically offering big favors in exchange for help for winning an election, which, again, the parallels with America are just unfortunately glaringly obvious. So they sat sipping vodka Red Bulls, favorite drink of Strache and teenage girls everywhere, and plotted ways for the woman to help them out. Maybe she could buy Austria's biggest newspaper, the Krone Zeitung, and use that to run stories that were favorable. Maybe she could find ways to kind of under the table indirectly get them some money to help with the campaign. Just the usual stuff that you chat about on like a fun casual evening in Ibiza when you're on vacation. But little did they know, unlike, or actually maybe like some people's ill-fated vacations on Ibiza, the whole thing was actually a setup, and they were being filmed the entire time, and had to deal with the fallout when the video of that evening was made public by Spiegel and Süddeutsche Zeitung. So this was a career-ending moment for Strache, at least at the time. Kurz, the chancellor, called for snap elections. As you can see here, Strache resigned from office, but he did it in a way that, again, sorry, I'm American, I have 2016 PTSD. It sounded a lot like the Austrian version of locker room talk, quote unquote. He said it was just a drunken episode, and rather than apologizing to the country for what he had said and done, he apologized to his wife for the vodka Red Bull fueled need to impress a pretty woman. He also said that he was the victim of character assassination, making it seem like the whole thing was just a massive conspiracy against him and the party meant to take them down. Under normal circumstances and with a normal politician in a normal party, the whole thing would obviously mean the permanent end of his career and mean a total electoral nosedive for the entire party. But the first sign that things weren't going as you would expect with anyone else came about 2 weeks later in the European Parliament elections. So you can see here, there's a gray line there. The gray line is when the EU elections happened. So there's a little bit of a dip beforehand. And then can we go back? Yep. It's so in any case, they really only lost a couple of percentage points. And because of kind of a quirky system in Austria where you can vote directly for specific candidates in addition to voting for the party, Strache actually, despite quitting his post as party leader, ended up winning a seat in the European Parliament. He didn't end up taking it up, but that says to you that there were clearly some diehards in the party who really wanted him to stick around. So now we've got a photo here. I was really curious why that is, right? Like if you've got such an obviously corrupt situation, video evidence of it all over the place, why wasn't the party suffering in the polls? And so this is a picture here from a few weeks before the elections. It's the FPÖ campaign kickoff event. It was sort of a bizarre setting. It was in this like massive, kind of overly lavish looking mall just outside the city of Linz. It was mid-morning on a Saturday. And despite the early hour, the beer was very much free-flowing. People were getting slowly, or in some cases quickly, day drunk. For what it's worth, there is actually a word for that in Austrian German called Frühschoppen, which I recommend for, well, really anyone who visits Austria, but also especially anyone who feels like ever covering an FPÖ rally. Oh wait, no, go back, actually, sorry. So in any case, I talked to about a dozen people who were there at various stages of their beer consumption. All of them had a different explanation for why they would not only vote for the party, but were still so excited about it that they had decided to come from around the country to spend their Saturday morning in this very bizarre mall. One of them told me that, all politicians do this stuff, right? It's just that Strache is the one who happened to get caught. He said that everybody wanted and deserved a slice of the cake for themselves, and, good for Strache that he wanted to get the FPÖ his fair share. Another woman said, it's not a big deal because who among us hasn't gotten drunk and done something they regret? Everyone does that, she said, whether they're a politician or a hairdresser or a teacher. Like, slightly different scale there. If you're a teacher and you get drunk, and if you're a politician trying to, make deals with sketchy oligarchs, a little bit of a different situation. But in any case, that was one explanation for why she was still on board with him. And then there was this otherwise very polite, friendly, elderly couple who said that actually all of this was an elaborate conspiracy theory set up by Angela Merkel, set up by the EU leaders, who were just very nervous about how much influence the FPÖ was having on politics and that they were getting too powerful for Merkel's liking. But, all of these people, no matter what their explanation, they were planning to stick by the party, and many of them were still planning to stick by Strache. All right, let's move on. So to quickly here, then there was another scandal. Came out just a couple days before. Turns out that Strache had basically used a ton of party funds, something to the tune of 10,000 euros a month, to fund a pretty expensive lifestyle. That one finally had a bit of an impact. So, the party also ended up losing 10 percentage points from the 2017 elections to the 2019 elections. You can see here the difference. And that last one, for some reason, was the thing that hit home. But basically, on election night, shortly after those results came in, I went to the election night party, which another kind of bizarre setting. It's inside the Prater amusement park in Vienna. So there's like kids riding a Ferris wheel and like families having a nice time. And then FPÖ supporters, some of whom were like inexplicably waltzing. And then others were kind of sitting at various tables, drowning their sorrows with, in case you hadn't gotten the running theme here, with lots of alcohol. And so a few people I spoke to were indeed upset with him, said, he should have known better. Maybe the party should have kicked him out earlier. But he still had some really diehard fans who said that they just didn't blame him in the slightest and were waiting for the day that he would come back. Including there was this middle-aged woman who had dyed her hair blue for the occasion and said, "We stand by HC Strache no matter what. He'll definitely come back." Let's move along. That was not the end of it. There have been other scandals that have come out since, some of them increasingly absurd. So, for example, a few months after all of this happened, Strache did indeed have to leave the party. There were reports that he had rented out a house in the Alps, which was stocked with supplies for the potential doomsday scenario in which NATO invaded Austria. So they had tons of gold bars and gasoline and things, full on either prepper style or your grandma who watches too many commercials on Fox News. Other stories have come out as well on that front, occasions where he used his influence to help himself out. But as you can see here, none of this has deterred Strache. The lady with the blue hair was indeed right, and he is indeed already, barely a year after the scandal, back and running for his dream job, mayor of Vienna. So he's now on a new ticket. It's called the Alliance for Austria, Team HC Strache. He's definitely not going to get his dream job. The latest poll shows that he's about 6%, but he could end up winning seats in the parliament. And ironically, he's only a couple of percentage points behind the FPÖ, the party whose support he managed to pretty much single-handedly tank. So to finish up, what does this tell us? Populist politicians, at least the ones who've built up this sort of cult of personality, particularly on social media, can essentially do whatever they want, and at least a certain percentage of their voters will stick by them. You know, it's different in every country. Matteo Salvini in Italy, for example, has kind of a similar persona on social media. Also seems to have a pretty ardent base of supporters. And I know I said that I wouldn't say his name, and I still won't, but I felt that it was important to include this quote from my home country's president. He says increasingly deranged and insane things on Twitter, and still probably 35 to 40% of the electorate will vote for him no matter what he says. So anyway, maybe I was right at the beginning. This is maybe not the most uplifting story, but I hope you had at least a little bit of fun. And with that, I will sit back and watch the others with a nice beverage of my own. Just kidding. I won't drink that. It's disgusting. I'll stick with wine. Anyway. Oh, Jochen, I can't hear you.
We are moving now to another beautiful European capital, which is Sofia. So our next slammer is Bulgarian, and on his LinkedIn profile, he describes himself as skilled in event management, journalism, and international relations. So that's the perfect mix for our reporter slam. In his main job, he is an editor in the leading Bulgarian business publication Capital. He also is an expert in regional politics, in development, and in EU funding. So his story tonight combines all these elements. So here's your travel guide to the Bulgarian countryside. The floor is yours, Ognian Georgiev, called Oggy.
I barely ever go there. It's probably not the best introduction that I could have had. But anyway, I hope that we have the viewers on after this internet thing that happened. And I'm sorry if you lose me. I'm sure that's not about the internet in Sofia. What I wanted to start by saying what I chose the story that we're going to witness. And I was wondering whether I tell you a story about the time where we, for example, were family sanctions, and we met Marine Le Pen on the line that we were waiting, or should I tell you about the time where I was blacklisted in Ukraine or stuff like that? But in the end, the model that every story is about humans, and people love to hear stories about other people, not necessarily famous, just interesting people. And so this one is based in a place you probably never heard about. It's called Leshten, and it's a village on the edge of Bulgarian-Greece border in the magical Rhodope mountain. First of all, as you probably know from the European map, Bulgaria has been virtually unknown to anyone west of Vienna for quite some time, and it keeps the status. It keeps this status for quite a lot of people. For example, I spent a year in the U.S., and every time I was saying Bulgaria, people thought I was talking about some ex-Soviet base or something. They weren't really sure if it was a country, although they were very polite. And then I found out that the best possible shortcut for that, as you can see on the next slide, is you just say the country next to Greece, and then you should see their eyes lit up. It's like saying the Maldives in the US. So second, this is a story about someone from Western Europe deciding to move to Eastern Europe, which I know it sounds a bit like the Clash of Civilizations, played in a fast forward every day, but also is the total opposite of what's been going on demographically in Europe for the last 30 years. So third, I just love the utility of this story for the larger point I would like to make. So the first time I heard about Leo schools, which you should probably see now on your screens, it was in, this is Leszten, but I would love to show the next slide, which is Leo. And this is the first time, yes, this is the first image that I got of Leo. And this is the mayor's office of Leszten. And the announcement was on the national news. And it says a local citizen of Leszten occupied the mayor's office and announced he will stay there until the water supply has been fixed. The citizen is of Belgian nationality. Now, this is something to catch your attention if you're a reporter. Because first of all, Leszten is a fantastic place. Can you go back a slide? Leszten is a fantastic place. An old Bulgarian village with lovely houses, several hotels. People go there. Yet, why would someone go there and start a rebellion was beyond me. And despite what you might think, it's not every day that foreigners occupy Bulgarian villages. Like the last time it happened, that was the Soviets, and it didn't end very well. So Belgians on top of that, like Belgians have seldom occupied anything lately. So Leszten was a very unlikely place to start. And second, it's not often that anything occupies Bulgarian villages. Like lots of places all over Eastern Europe, they have been so rapidly depopulating that you have a bigger chance of finding a squirrel or indeed a goat, as you can see on the picture, that should be somewhere there, or indeed a goat in the mayor's office. And so a Belgian in the mayor's office, that was kind of funny. And third, most of the time when you hear about Westerners, almost invariably British, coming to live in Bulgaria, it is pastoral stories about how well they get along with the local population, what a pleasure that is, and what a good life they lead. So that was obviously a very different story, and I decided to pay a visit. So let me show you what we map. We go 2 slides down, please. So one more slide down. Leszten is situated, yes, in the most magical of Bulgarian mountains. It's the Rhodope mountain, which divides Bulgarian plains from the Greek Aegean coast. The Rhodope, you probably heard of the Rhodope because it's the birthplace of the most famous ancient Greek musician, Orpheus. So Orpheus was long gone when I got there and when Leo got there, but it was not the lack of music that bothered Leo, but it was the lack of water. Leo's house was very easy to find. It is very near the center of Leszten, the restaurant, which is the main tourist attraction. So can we go to the next slide? Because also, as it turned out, this is Leo, and as it turns out, the restaurant is Leo's biggest enemy. But before I go any further, let me introduce you a little bit to Leo's schools. So he's Belgian, so he's basically as Western European as you can get without falling into the channel. And when I met him several years ago, he was around 70 and have spent most of his life creating his own company in Belgium as a boat engineer and entrepreneur. Later on, he and his wife sold the company instead of leaving it to their children. Because, as he put it mildly to me, they don't give shit about engineering. And as hard as that is to believe for some of you, they decided not to live their old age in Belgium, but in the scenic Canary Islands, which I assume, I've never been there, but I assume they're a bit better than Belgium for retired people. Yet it tells you something about Leo, that after several years there, he got so annoyed of living next to the sea that he decided to change it for a mountain. And this is how he found Leszten. Now, should we go to the image of Leszten restaurant, which is the next slide, and I will show you that Leszten is on a ridge. Yes, here is the restaurant. That is Leo's big enemy. Leszten is on a ridge, as you can see, and the restaurant is right on the edge of it. And it controls the water flow from one side of Leszten to the other because the owner of the restaurant once built the water pipes in the village. And although the village then bought it from him, he still has the valves in his restaurant, so he can basically switch them on and off. And this is what happens in the summer, because Leo explained to me that in the summer, the hotels on the left side of the village get really full with tourists and pools and stuff. And so in order to keep the spa going, the owner of the restaurant quietly turns the water off for the right side of the village, where incidentally Leo lives. So every time in the summer, he spends several days without water, which is, as you can imagine, pretty annoying, even if you're not a retired old engineer. So this has happened so often and for so long that basically Leo has given up hope on how to deal with the situation. He's been writing letters to the mayor, he's been writing letters to the police, he's been doing everything he can, and as he explained it, it's only paper going around. Like, they write a lot of stuff, they send notes, they go and put paper on the wall and everything, but the water doesn't go. The water is still shut, so there is no stick behind the door, as he would say. So he decided to do it himself. He went to the restaurant and got into a fist fight with the guy and actually turned the water on for himself. And this happened several times. To tell you something about Leo's bluntness, and you can see it on the next picture, he doesn't resemble a lot those people in Westerns where they go into a new town and they take on the establishment, you know, those old style Clint Eastwood versions of the movies. But I can tell you that Leo has been in 4 fights in his 6 years in Bulgaria. And to put that in perspective, apart from the fact that Leo is 70 and wears glasses, this is 4 fights more than I have gotten into in my 30-something years of living in Sofia. So one of the fights, as I said, was with the restaurant guy. The other one was with Leo was building a machine for pelletti. Pelletti is something that you use for heating, and he decided he wants to start a business with that. So he built a machine, he started supplying the hospital and other businesses, and then the guy who used to work for him tried to steal his machine. So Leo got there and got it back with fists. Now I know some of you might think that this means that we don't have police here, but believe me, we do. And it's just that Leo doesn't believe that they were efficient enough. And I'm somewhat amused to say that the police proved his point by taking him out of the mayor's office, not arresting him, and explaining in very broken English that the water will be fine. So he went back home, he put his fingers up to everybody and felt like Wilhelm Tell. So to sum it up, Leo is from Belgium. He comes here, he creates businesses, he starts the civic society, he does a lot of things to liven up the Bulgarian villages. There is one other thing that is supposed to be doing that, and it's called EU funding. That's the money that flows from Brussels to countries like Bulgaria every year. Billions and billions of euros that are supposed to deal with Bulgarian inefficiencies. Do you want to know what the EU funding is doing in those villages? You can see it on your screen, and I'm joking, and I'm not joking. Like, we've built stadiums upon stadiums for 200 million euros in the last several years in places where it's more often that you find goats than people. And, and this tells you a lot about how EU funding works in Europe. And my point and my desire, wherever Leo is, because I haven't met him in some years, and I hope in this Corona time he's okay. My hope is that we send more people like Leo around the continent, and instead of money. And I truly hope that this would make the 2 parts of the continent look better in comparison. So thank you. This is my story.
Hello. Can you hear me now? I hope everyone can hear me now. Anyway, I couldn't hear Johan, so I hope he said a lot of really nice things about me. And I guess that whatever I do right now is not going to be as funny as what my colleagues already did. As funny as the really catchy ukulele song we had. But I personally am a really big fan of Home Alone. I like sort of catching up on all the stuff all my favorite comics have done lately. I tend to settle in at home with a bottle of wine while watching the newest material by, my favorite stand-up comics like Nikki Glazer and Liza Schlesinger, who are amazing sort of female comics. I even like to pretend that people like Nikki Glazer and Liza Schlesinger are my best friends. Journalists, on the other hand, are not very funny people. Journalists, have you ever been to dinner with journalists? It's like having a competition as to who gets to shout out the breaking news notifications on their phones faster than anyone else. Basically, the most boring game show. But I'm here to tell you a story about a reporting trip that I did that was hopefully funny. And my story is about how I covered the Football World Cup in 2018 and made a lot of unexpected enemies. I'd like to preface all of this by saying that I know absolutely nothing about football. While I consider myself to be a kind of feminist who loves challenging herself to do things that men do and then do them better, I couldn't trick my brain into caring about what 22 men in shorts do with a ball. I even had to Google the exact number of players on the field in the first place in order to make that joke. So yeah, that summer I had to cover the Football World Cup. If you remember, Croatia was doing amazingly well. Croatia is the small country in the Balkans that usually gets ignored a lot, and people reduce it to a great holiday destination, and that's it basically. And Croats were really, really happy that their country was known for something besides being the setting for the Game of Thrones. That's Dubrovnik, which you can see on the slide. Or being the country next to the country that Melania Trump comes from, which is Slovenia. Slovenia is to the north of Croatia. When I was in the capital, Zagreb, that summer, everyone was talking about how good the team was doing. There were Croatian flags everywhere. You can get like mugs and T-shirts and all kinds of stuff with the players' faces on them, and that, the usual football paraphernalia that appears when there's a big football championship, whatever you guys call it. And like I've been there for a lot of them in Berlin and in Germany, and I know how crazy people get, and that's what was happening in Croatia that summer. People also seem to be really, really happy that Croatia was getting support from countries all over the world. Once when I went to the store on the main square, I was covering everything, and one of the lady sellers said, did you see all those school kids stuck in a cave there? They were also cheering for Croatia. Like for people who don't remember that story, there were a lot of Thai kids. There was a group of Thai kids who were on a field trip and they got stuck in a cave, and everyone was worried about how to get them out. And in Croatia, sort of football mania had taken on such, had just like grasped the country in a way that like the people were referencing people's devotion to Croatia based on the fact that poor school kids in a cave were cheering for the Croatian team. Anyway, the whole country saw these people as heroes. And I was there for that. They decided that when the team came back from Russia, they were going to organize a big concert for them. And to headline this concert, a concert celebrating the return of their heroes after they made Croatia the most famous country in the world for like 1 month, they picked a Nazi singer. See, Croatia, like many countries in Europe during World War II, had a Nazi puppet state, which was thankfully beaten at the end of World War II. But 30 years ago, during the war in Croatia, the singer, and like this was the war was going on in the Balkans. For people who were from Europe, they might remember that while everyone else was celebrating the end of communism, the Balkans decided to have a bloody war and a genocide and all that kind of depressing stuff. Obviously, that part of my presentation isn't the funny part. Anyway, so there's this singer, and he thought it'd be really patriotic if he sang songs about how great that Puppets Day was. To explain that, so during World War II, a lot of countries in Europe, like Croatia and Slovakia and Lithuania, to some extent Ukraine, had for the first time these like independent states, because one of the ways that the Axis powers got these countries to cooperate with them was to give them like some sort of independence. And this was the last time that Croatia had its independence, during World War II. And this singer, when Croatia was fighting another war 50 years later, decided to sing about the Nazi period. I promise the story gets funny at some point. Anyway, so this singer, the slide you can see right now is him when he looked really good. If you go back a slide, no, back, there you go. This is him in the 90s. He was a soldier as well, and he called himself Thompson, after like the American submachine gun. And at that point, when that picture was taken, which is part of the video of his most favorite song, he had a lot of teeth in the front that were missing and a voice that kind of sounded like he couldn't go to the bathroom for a couple days. Now, he looks like, I guess, the lead singer of Megadeth or any sort of heavy metal band that I used to listen to when I was a teenager, that I've since forgotten, now that I have better taste. But he still sounds like shit. Anyway, he sings about things he sings about how all the Nazi puppet leaders were actually not that bad. He starts his songs with, in Croatian, it's Za dom spremni, which means ready for the homeland. It was a chant used by Croatian Nazis during the war, and basically has only one connotation. Anyway, these football players decided they really wanted him to play when they came back from Russia so that everyone could honor them. So I wrote an article about this. I wrote an article about how Croatia, this country with a beautiful, possibly the most beautiful coast in Europe, the birthplace of ties or cravats, however you pronounce that. Croats invented the ties. They're really proud about that. If you go to Zagreb, anytime you can get like ties that are like properly Croatian. And in this country that happened to do really good in football that year, and they really wanted to party with a Nazi, just like the headline in my story says. The story I wrote with a colleague who also covers similar topics in other parts of the world. Anyway, I decided to talk about this topic, how this dude sang about like people who used to lead Croatia during World War II and fled, and he was sad about the fact that they fled Croatia in 1945 and went to Argentina, and how all the ethnic groups in the Balkans and wider were really jealous of the Croats, and that's why they were making fun of them. And he also is to like glorify war criminals who killed a lot of minorities during the Croatian War. Anyway, you can tell that I spend a lot of time telling people how terrible the far right is, like I did in this article. But for Croats and Croatia lovers everywhere, I had committed the ultimate crime. I had besmirched this beautiful, proud moment in their history by drawing attention to their stupid choice. And they made sure to let me know how angry they were at me. I've since then, before that as well, but since then been really fascinated by the amount of time people can spend online digging up someone's past. So after that article was published, people, whether on Twitter or in separate articles, they found out that I had once upon a time dated a journalist and how this journalist had no college degree. So I was lowly, oh, sorry, that's my notification. I'll turn it off. How I had once upon a time, the glories of doing online stand-up, dated a journalist who had no college degree. They called me a secret communist because I wanted to undermine the Christian identity. They said the National Enquirer did better journalism than I did. The National Enquirer, for people who are not from the United States, is a supermarket tabloid that publishes stories about Bat Boy and Hillary Clinton's alien baby. So that's who I was being compared to. So this lasted for days and days, and I turned off all my Twitter notifications. I stopped opening my phone and my email, my Facebook messages, and I ignored pretty much everything for a while. I was just trying to come to terms with the fact that this silly article had provoked so much ire online. But then something unexpected happened. A colleague of mine contacted me after I'd been offline for days and ignored everything, and said that some new articles had appeared on Croatian websites. And I was like, no, get away. I don't want to see any of this. This is terrible. And she was like, no, these ones are different. These ones are different. Make sure to look at this. And I, because Croatia was not the first time that I'd written about neo-Nazis, much like Emily, my colleague who covers this stuff in Germany and other places. I'd done it in Poland and in Hungary and Serbia, all happy places. And just like with Croatia, all these countries had little online mobs and keyboard warriors who hated me and trashed my articles and let me know how terrible I was and how I should just, stop doing journalism, which is some of the nice things, the nicer things that they said. I've been told to do other terrible things that I won't, to myself, that I won't repeat, because I feel like this is a PG-13 kind of show, and or at least I think it is. And so what happened was the Croatian online haters who'd spent days making me feel like a piece of shit realized that there were haters in other countries who had tried to make me feel like a piece of shit. Sometimes these haters were from countries next to Croatia that had historical animosities with Croats. Much like Orban hates every single country around Hungary because all these countries took away Hungary's sort of destiny. They robbed Hungary of its destiny to have a big empire that it would rule and a million seaports and stuff like that. And now it's a landlocked country and people suffer for it. The anniversary of the Treaty of Trianon was the other day, and so that a lot of that resonates with different countries. Anyway, so what I realized was that the first rule of nationalists is that you don't agree with other nationalists. You don't agree with other nationalists, especially if they come from the country right next to yours and spent most of history, according to you, preventing your country from becoming the glorious empire it was destined to be by taking away all your territory. And that's for people who cover other or follow things in other parts of Europe, that's but what had just happened with these different nationalists suddenly sort of uniting in their hatred for me online is Russian and Ukrainian nationalists agreeing, or people from North and South Cyprus, or people because I realized that there's a German vibe to this whole show, so I was and someone who's lived in Berlin can add sort of a local element to this. It's people from Neukölln and Kreuzberg agreeing. I was a Neukölln person and I hated Kreuzberg people. Not even mention Peter Stein, they're the worst. But anyway, that's what was happening online. I had managed to somehow shock these people because they had realized that they had something in common with the people that they hated. I cracked the nationalists. I broken their code. I united the nationalists in their hatred for one thing, rather than what they usually do, which is like totally like clash over everything that they do. And just like that, all these online attacks stopped on their own. I was able to open up my Twitter account again and not feel that someone's gonna say the most terrible things to me the first thing in the morning when I woke up. And I felt like I could actually start, using my social media the way it's supposed to be. You see, those people who decided they would rather stop attacking me than admitting that they had something in common with their sworn enemies. And Johan is telling me to stop. I guess it was too long. Anyway, thank you.
We're running out of time, unfortunately.
Good night.
So the final punchline, please, Una.
I still can't hear Johan.
Okay.
I bet you think, yeah.
Una Haidari, who the nationalism in Croatia and the neighboring countries. Thank you so much for your performance. So those were our 3 slammers tonight. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's your turn. You are the jury, and all of you together decide who will become our first online and English edition Reporter Slampion. I know this is a lot of responsibility, and I hope you can handle it. And to put even more pressure on you, I tell you now what our winner gets. First of all, he or she wins our small but precious trophy. Consistent with this event, it shows a golden computer this time, and our direction will show you now this small golden trophy. And as you can maybe see, the label says Reporter Slampion, first online and English edition, 18th of June 2020. Now you might ask, but how will he or she get hold of the trophy? Via a post delivery? No, that wouldn't be appropriate. We have a second prize that can be perfectly combined with the first one. Our winner will be qualified for the annual final of our Reporter Slam that will take place in Berlin in January 2021. Like every year, we will elect the Slampion of all Slampions, and we will invite our tonight's winner to that event and, of course, pay for all the travel expenses. And on the day before the annual final, he or she will be handed over this beautiful golden trophy that you have just seen personally in Berlin. And now we want to find out who is going to be the lucky one. And the voting system is very simple. Each viewer has 1 vote, and you just open the domain that you can see now, sly.do in your browser, or you quickly download the Slido app from your app store. And as soon as you open the website or the app, you are asked for an event code. And there you enter the number 60269. 60269. I hope you can see it now. And then you should see the names of our 3 slammers in the order of their appearance. You click on your favorite reporter, push the send button, and ready. You will not see the results, but we will announce the winner in about 5 minutes. So you gain some time for reflecting and voting, but it's worth to be quick in your decision, because now, just like in the Eurovision Song Contest, we enrich the voting time with the best music you can get. You've already heard the world premiere of their first English song at the beginning of this Reporter Slam. Now they are re-entering our little stage here with another song. This one has already been performed in public, but in another language. Originally, it has been written in German with the poetic title Regenallee, which could be translated as Rain Avenue. Now for this occasion, the composer, our ukulele bard, has written an English version, and the song also got a new title, I think, Sonnenallee, which would be translated as Sunshine Avenue. So you see, the English version has the better weather, which is a bit contradictory to the real weather conditions over there, but this is artistic freedom. So don't forget to vote now and get ready for the performance of our legendary duo, Bommi and Brummi.
Are we ready? Thank you so much. Is this live? Is this live? What is this for one live? Sorry. So yeah, we're not only doing song reflections about our journalist work, but we are also doing like very techy pop songs about our beautiful town of Berlin, especially the wonderful district of Neukölln. And in this district we also have like this very crowded and narrow street that is called Sonnenallee, or translated Sunshine Avenue. And I was cycling down the Sonnenallee with my 4-year-old son on a very rainy day, and he asked me, so why is this street called Sunshine Avenue even on a rainy day? It should be called Rain Avenue. And I said, son, I cannot answer this question, but this is a fantastic idea for a very commercial pop song, and we're going to sing this. You got your cutest instrument. I have to apologize for the harp. It kind of, I don't know what's happening to it while we are cycling. At home it was perfect. So, but maybe now it's better than in the first song. So we start. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Are you interested just as much as I am in our city and how it's designed? With the houses and trees and the cars that all keep driving too close to our cargo bike. Why are you hiding your face with your hands, my dear son, while we're cycling right down the bus lane? Are you frightened just by all the diesel turmoil? Yeah, I know this whole ride is insane. But remember, this street is called Sonnenallee, even on this cold and rainy day. It has always the sun and the trees in its name, and at least we are on our way. But remember, this street is called Sonnenallee, even on this cold and rainy day. There are always the sun and the trees in its name, and at least we are on our way. I can tell you now about a theory of mine that might help you with all of this mess. It goes, there has to be always friction around, otherwise we'd be soon bored to death. And I couldn't think of a more frictional thing than this avenue, young boy of mine. With the people and buses and cars roaming it, you see boredom is hardly to find. And that's why this old street is called Sonnenallee, even on this cold and rainy day. There are always the sun and the trees in its name, and at least we are on our way. And that's why this old street is called Sonnenallee, even on this cold and rainy day. It has always the sun and the trees in its name, and at least we are on our way. But remember, this street is called Sonnenallee, even on this cold and rainy day. It has always the sun and the trees in its name, and at least we are on our way.
So, Bormi and Bromi, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to subscribe for their YouTube channel, MC Eisbormi. We will also add it in the comments on YouTube so that you can more easily find it. But now I'm very excited to announce that we have a winner. We all know from the movie Highlander there can be only one, unfortunately, because all of the three would deserve an award. So let's give a warm applause first in front of all your laptops to all our slammers tonight, Emily Schultheis, Ogi Georgiev, and Una Haidari. This is for you all.
Okay.
But as you have just heard, there can be only one, and I take the trophy. The Slido voting system came to a result, and the jury has decided that our first online and English edition Reporter Slampion is right now in Kosovo and is called Una Haidari. Congratulations! Una, can you hear me? This is your trophy. And some champagne in the Pristina room.
Well, this is Moldovan brandy.
Is the champagne ready? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. But this is an empty bottle of Moldovan brandy.
Already empty.
I drank it while I was doing my stand-up.
Obviously, that helped with the performance. Una, congratulations. This is your trophy, and I hope I can hand it over to you in January. Are you planning to come to the annual final in January to Berlin?
Oh,
Now she's gone. Probably she's already booking her trip to Berlin. Great. So we all hope to see you here. And now at the end of this show, I'll put down the trophy because it's time for some important acknowledgements at the end. I'd like to thank Lisa Richter and the whole team of the Bosch Alumni Network and the International Alumni Center for the wonderful cooperation. An applause for that. And now you have to imagine very loud applause for all the people who made this event possible. Thanks to Christoph Herms, Michael Menzel, Frederik Riedel, and the whole video agency Gretchen for the broadcasting. Big imagined applause for them. Thanks to Andy Weiland for the photos. Just put the applause for her. Thanks to Inga Schlusemann for the graphics. Thanks to all planners and musicians for their amazing performances. Woo! And thanks to you as our audience. I saw in our voting system that still a lot of you stayed online. They followed us till the end. You deserve an award too. We will think about an idea how to solve that. So thank you so much. You were a wonderful audience. Our next Reporter Slam is scheduled for September. And if the corona situation allows it, some more will follow this year. Hopefully live in theaters, or if not, online without internet problems. If you follow Reporter Slam on social media via Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we'll keep you updated. This was, and now I beg the musicians to come back to the stage so that I'm not standing here alone. Bormi, Bromi, even if you have a bottle of beer already, just come to the stage with me for saying the final words. This was the first online and English edition of the Reporter Slam. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And wherever you live, please keep supporting Reporter. The world needs good journalism. Thank you. Goodbye.